I'm Richard Duffee, and thank you all for coming, and I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I want to tell you a story. In 1995, I was living in a village in India, and staying with a family that I later married into. My in-laws, One day a woman came to my present sister-in-law and talked to her for an hour. And then my sister-in-law talked to her parents for an hour. And then she came to me and she said, well, I have something to ask you. I said, well, go ahead and ask. And she said, this woman, her name was Venkatama, has been diagnosed with filaria. She went to the doctor told her, well, she had filaria, elephantiasis, which means her legs would swell up, and eventually she would die. It's a lethal disease. And so she said, well, would you pay for her filaria shots? I said, well, how much do they cost? And she said, 120 rupees. And so I said, well, that's about $4, isn't it? And she said, yes. And I said, you mean you just talked for 2 hours to decide whether to ask me for $4 to save this woman's life? And she said, yes. And I said, well, how come? And she said, well, it's a lot of money. And I said, you know that I'm never going to have another chance in my life to save somebody's life for $4. You think that's a lot of money? And she said, yes. And so, gave the 120 rupees. My sister-in-law took her to the pharmacy. They got 8 vials of serum. She went to the doctor. Doctor charges 5 rupees a visit. Right? Got the shots, and every day for a month while she was getting the shot, she'd come back to the house and she would say, thank you, thank you. She'd stand in front of the porch and say that. And I thought, well, this is very strange. How can this woman keep doing this? You know, is she kind of crazy or something? Or is she sort of servile? What's going on? And so I started asking around, saying, well, how much money does she make? I thought that would be a very rude question, but it turned out everybody knew the answer to the question. She earned 13 rupees a day because that was the going wage for women working in tobacco farms and tobacco factories. They all earned 13 rupees a day. That was 39 cents. 39 cents a day. She had 2 kids. They were 9 and 11 years old. They had a hut. The hut was 6 foot in diameter. Okay? Mud hut, banana leaves on top, 2 mats on the ground, no furniture. You cook outside, you have some stones and you put some wood on them and you cook on top of the wood. 13 rupees a day would then buy some rice and some dal and a piece of vegetable. Because the rice cost 8 rupees a kilogram and the dal cost 15 rupees a kilogram. And you get a vegetable for 2 or 3 rupees. And so every morning, she would make a pot of rice and a pot of dal, throw a vegetable in the dal, and that was the food for the day. Come back at night and eat the leftovers. That's it. There was a bowl for each kid. There was a spoon for each kid. There was a change of clothes for each week. That is, did laundry on Sundays. So everybody had 1 change of clothes. That's everything that was in the house. Nothing else. So, I finally asked myself, well, okay, 13 rupees a day for her. How much is that then? So 120 rupees for her is a little more than 9 days' wages. Right? So she had the choice between not having anything to eat for her and the kids for 9 days, right, and getting the filaria shots. And she figured she and the kids couldn't stand hunger that long. And so that's why she came. But I finally asked, well, how much is 9 days' wages for me? I'd just been teaching in the South Bronx, in high school there. Right? I quit my job. I'd been earning $35,000 a year. It was a 180-day school year. And so per day, 9 days' wages, I found, with my little calculator, was $1,761. So I asked myself, well, what if I find somebody down the street whom I've never met, and I ask, well, look, I have a medical bill for $1,761. Will you pay it? And the guy says, yeah, sure. What else am I going to have a chance? How often would I go back to him to say thank you? And so I realized that the problem was not that she was servile or crazy or didn't know something. The problem was mine. I didn't know the value of my money. I had no idea that it was possible to save a person's life for $4, and that in doing that, that I could do that because I was able to earn money at 448 times the rate at which she could. 448 times. So I asked myself, well, look, how do I justify this? Am I 448 times smarter than she is? Do I work 448 times more? Do I have 448 times more virtue of some kind? You know, am I that much more moral or courageous or what? And I realized, well, there's no combination of those things that makes any sense. It just doesn't make sense. That is, I have the kind of money that I have because I live in a rich country, and she has what she has because she lives in a poor country. And it would be a hell of a lot better if she had access to the same kinds of things that I had access to. If she could have had my education, and if she could have grown up with the kind of health care that I had, and the food that I had, she would have been taller than she was, and she would have been a lot healthier, and she wouldn't have gotten filaria in the first place, because she wouldn't have been living with all the mosquitoes. And if she had the education, she might have been doing some other job, okay, instead of working in a tobacco farm. So I thought, well, does this make sense? Is this how the world is supposed to be? Now, after a couple more years, it started to dawn on me that there was actually some way in which I was involved in this, because I could no longer tolerate the idea of going on having down the street from me someone who got 1/500th of what I had. Right? So I thought I had to find another way to live. And so I thought, okay, what's fair? You know? So I asked myself, well, what if everybody lived on the world average income? How much would that be? And I found out that at the time, well, that would be, once I adjusted for purchasing power parity, that would be about 6,400 rupees a month. And I figured, okay, I could do that. That came to around $1,400 a year. And in India, that was the equivalent then of about $7,000 a year here. But right now, there is so much wealth on earth that if you distributed it evenly, every person on earth would have $9,543 a year as of 2005. $9,543. That means more than $38,000 for a family of 4. Everyone on earth, people in the Kalahari Desert, people in Outer Mongolia, people in Fiji, everyone. And what could you do with that money? Well, you could have decent education, you could have decent health care, you could have good public health, you could have good housing, good clothing, you could have quite adequate nutrition. You could lead a decent life. That is,